Saturday morning cartoons were awesome. From the 1960s through the 1990s, we kicked off each weekend in a frenzy of animation that is unmatched today.
But were these shows actually any good? Join us as we dig into the history of your favorite and not so favorite Saturday morning cartoons, look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of each one, and determine if our nostalgia matches the reality when it comes to these tunes.
So stay in your PJs, grab a bowl of cereal, and settle in. I'm John.
And I'm Robert.
And this is Toon Talk.
So John,
Yeah.
you're a racing aficionado, and so you know a great deal more about racing and cars than I do.
Well, if it's F1.
That's still more than I know. So my question to you is, what type of car is the fastest? Would it be one powered by a moonshine still, a haunted house on wheels, or a rock?
Well, the rock is out unless you're going downhill. So I'm going to go with the haunted house.
You're probably, I think that's right, but you can
because the other one won't go in a straight line.
Well,
the moonshine one.
Well, you never know. I mean, it depends on how much pressure is under that moonshine.
That's true.
But of course, any car like that's just a rock,
yeah,
or a haunted house. Those are all come right from the Wacky Races, which is our subject for today.
Which was wacky.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you remember watching the Wacky Races at all? I mean, even prior to this, like as an adult, or back to
Yeah, I remember watching this on television for sure. It was probably in syndication when I saw it, obviously, but I always remember my memory of it is that they were short, and it seemed like there wasn't any cohesion to it. It was just like it was on in between other cartoons.
Okay.
It was one of those little things that wasn't its own standalone. It was just, here's a wacky race in between these other two cartoons.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it may have been some kind of compilation,
right?
Hanna Barbera thing. I don't think I watched them. I know I didn't watch them as a kid. I didn't really discover them until maybe like 5 years ago.
Oh, really?
At the earliest. And then myself and then Anna, my youngest, we started watching them and really liked it. So
yeah,
she wanted to watch all of them, just bang, bang, bang. So we've gone through the series a couple times. She really likes it. Yeah.
They are fun.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're fast. I mean, they're short,
fast,
short
and each one has a laugh out loud moment. At least one. You know.
Yeah, and I always like the intro, the way they describe it. The most daredevil group of daffy drivers to ever whirl their wheels at the Wacky Races, competing for the title of the world's wackiest race.
Yeah.
Or world's wackiest racer, I should say. It's interesting. There's not a lot of history to this. This is pretty straightforward. So we're kind of going back. We've talked previously, especially with Scooby-Doo, about the dearth of superhero action and peril in cartoons on Saturday mornings, and the rising concern at that time. And so the response, Hanna-Barbera was, very responsible for that with a lot of their superhero cartoons, Filmation as well. But they were also starting to shift at that time. We talked about Archie, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? In that time frame, then we have the Wacky Races, and that was Hanna-Barbera working with Fred Silverman, another name from our past, who was the CBS head of children's programming. They were trying to come up with the alternative programming to the action. And they got inspired by the 1965 movie The Great Race, which was, again, like this, multiple cars all going through this wacky, kind of crazy race around the globe to try and get a prize. And
it's kind of like Cannonball Run.
Yeah, similar to that. And it's just, that's the general idea. And so like, hey, we can turn this into a cartoon. Of course, the concept originally was we'll do this, but then we'll also tie it to a game show. And so contestants will be on there, and they're going to be trying to figure out, they're going to wager on who wins the wacky race. And then they would get a prize if they won. That was all scrapped because they're like, well, there may be potential issues because this is all scripted beforehand. So we probably shouldn't do that. And just the logistics of doing it didn't really pan out. So they scrapped the reality game show part and just went with the cartoon and the racing, which is probably for the best.
Yeah.
In total, the animators led by Iwo Takamoto, who remember is the designer for Scooby-Doo, they came up with 11 different vehicles and 23 new characters to fill out this roster. And, which is typical of that time. The designers would come up with the ideas. They'd run them by Joe Barbera, and he would just say, yeah, that's good. Or he'd make suggestions and make changes. Yeah. And so they went through their process. part of the idea with this larger cast was that they wanted a stable of characters that they could then turn around and put in feature roles for spin-off series. So if Rufus Roughcut was a big hit, then suddenly there'd be a Rufus Roughcut cartoon in the near future. And
kind of like test marketing different characters.
Yeah. I mean, in each episode boasted 2 races, each one about 12 minutes long, 10 to 12 minutes long, and basically various points around the United States where they would race, to Spokane or to someplace in Alabama, or they would kind of change the name so it was Spokane, because then it would be ghosts there, and just kind of make it silly.
I know. Yeah, each episode had like a place name to it, like Seesaw, Arkansas.
Yeah,
those kinds of things. So it was kind of fun to see all the cultural tropes they would put in that area.
Yeah. For the most part, good. A couple of those were. Yeah, we'll get to that.
Overall, yeah.
But overall, yeah, and it was creative, and the naming was creative for like some of the episodes, and it was fun. But and then each one for the race, you'd have the villainous Dick Dastardly and his sidekick dog Muttley would be riding, trying to thwart everybody from winning. They were trying to win themselves, but they would try to sabotage everybody else at the expense of them ever winning themselves. Right. so you had this foil, and the other component about it is that you had which is kind of unusual, but you had a narrator. So it wasn't the characters necessarily talking and explaining. It was a narrator describing the action to you. And every once in a while, then he'd talk directly to Dick Dastardly. Dick Dastardly would talk back.
Yeah, the narrator would talk directly to the racers, and they would talk back. It was kind of hilarious, actually.
Yeah, so it was interesting. That's pretty much it. They had this idea, and they put it together, and the Wacky Races debuted on CBS on September 14th, 1968, and ran for 17 episodes with 2 races apiece. That was 34 total races. One season, it did result in 2 spin-offs. So the idea of having spin-off characters
worked.
They did have 2, and it was the following year, in 1969, The Perils of Penelope Pitstop, and then also Dick Dastardly and Muttley and Their Flying Machines. And they each ran for 2 seasons, so it actually went slightly longer than this one. Dastardly and Muttley would actually reemerge in 1985's Yogi's Treasure Hunt. And then a new version of the Wacky Races ran on Cartoon Network from 2017 through 2019, and included Dastardly and Muttley, Penelope Pitstop, and then Peter Perfect and the Gruesome Twosome, who are all also from the original series. Yeah. And then they were mixed in with a collection of new characters. It's not as good. It's not quite the same.
I didn't know it existed.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's kind of worth checking out, but it's not something, I've got to watch this.
Did Muttley show up in Laugh Olympics, or am I
confusing
him with someone else?
You are confusing. You're not really confusing him, but in Laugh Olympics you had the Dread Baron and what was his name? Mumbly.
Yeah, Mumbly.
So
that's what I'm thinking.
Because they ran at that time with the Laugh Olympics, they had a conflict with the license.
Oh, of course.
And so they couldn't use Dastardly and Muttley, so they used these
other characters.
Basically the same characters, just
different
renamed
names.
them. Yeah. So,
and put them in an airplane.
And instead of like that kind of wheezy laugh that Muttley has, Mumbly just kind of kind of grumbles.
But he looks the same.
Yeah. They're basically
identical.
So.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's pretty much it. It was a short series, and it was a short series, and despite 23 characters in the cast, it was a small voice cast, but it was a mighty voice cast.
Yeah, small but really, really good. Dave Wilcock was the narrator. He did tons of 1950s TV sci-fi classics, such as Queen of Outer Space, where he lands on the planet Venus, and it's inhabited by long-limbed beauties whose queen is Zsa Zsa Gabor, which I just thought was hilarious. I had to point that out. He also, Dave, you'll find this interesting, Dave began his career in theater and drama while a student at the University of Wisconsin.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so you have that in common.
That's why I liked him.
Yeah. Paul Mitchell was Dirk Dastardly, Clyde, and Private Meekly. He was Boomer on The Fox and the Hound, The Chinese Cat and Aristocats, Gargamel, and Tigger.
Oh, nice.
Which I should have known that Tigger and Gargamel were the same voice, but now I can't unhear it. They sound a lot alike, really. Janet Waldo, Judy Jetson was Penelope Pitstop. We love Janet. She's great.
I did see an interview with her talking about this, and she had said, yeah, so she went into the studio, and it wasn't so much asked her if she wanted to do this. She's like, so you're going to be doing this role, and it's going to be a Southern Belle. She's like, okay.
That was it.
Yeah.
End of negotiation.
Yeah. And it became a character that she actually really became very fond of. Actually,
yeah.
So.
Yeah, she did great. Mm-hmm. And then John Stevenson was Luke and Bubble Bear. Thundercracker from the Transformers, lots of voices on Scooby-Doo, tons of credits on Scooby-Doo, Mr. Slate on the Flintstones, and also from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. So we've got 2 Wisconsin boys in the cast. And then, of course, Dawes Butler, as almost everyone else. Peter Perfect, Sergeant Blast, Big Gruesome, Rock Slag, Rufus Roughcut, Red Max. Dawes is also Yogi Bear, Elroy Jetson, Mr. Cogswell, Quick Draw McGaw, Huckleberry Hound, Snagglepuss, Wally Gator, on and on and on, And then, if you've got Dawes Butler, you got Janet Waldo, you might as well get Don Messick, too. Don Messick did Muttley, Professor Pat Pending, Sawtooth, Ring-a-Ding, Little Gruesome, Gravel Slag. Of course, we know Don Messick from everything. Yeah. Astro, Scooby-Doo, Droopy, Bam Bam Rubble, Boo Boo, Ranger Smith, Papa Smurf, a series of Transformer voices. I think he did 4 or 5 Transformer voices. So, yeah, I mean, this is nearly a Mount Rushmore of voice actors.
Yeah, I mean, and none of
this show.
They're definitely not strangers to this podcast.
No.
We've encountered every single one of these.
We have, before. Yeah, they're great. I mean, there's so many credits. I just had to pick out the highlights. Yeah. But it was really cool to see all of these in one place. And
you realize as you're watching it, like when you see who's voicing what, that for the most part, they're talking to themselves.
Yeah.
So it's, was it Stevenson who does Luke and Blubber Bear?
Yeah.
So as they're driving, I mean, they ride in the same car and they're reacting to each other. Yeah. So he's just,
No wonder they didn't wind up schizophrenic.
And I think they used to say that about Dawes Butler. He would stand in this. He would stand there, and he would literally stand on one side of the microphone, and he would move to the other side of the microphone, and it's almost like the other to have the conversation, just to like almost move over into a different persona. So that instead of just staying there and just
have
going through different voices,
cue of being a different.
Kind
of like making a face when you're impersonating somebody. You got to get into that character.
Yeah, and I did another interesting tidbit from Janet Waldo's interview is she was saying that they would do a table read, which is not really typical for cartoons, but because what they wanted the table read because these guys would want to know, okay, I have basically make the notes. Now I have to do this voice, and they would have to kind of work themselves into okay, this is this voice, this is this voice. So it's basically a run through just to make sure that they could kind of transition into one voice or to the next. And
it makes me wonder: did they get paid per character or per episode?
Ooh, that's a good question.
We should try to find that. It'd be interesting to see how they were paid for stuff like that. Because, Janet Waldo's great. She's one voice in this. Mm-hmm. And Dawes Butler's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 voices in here. So he had more work.
Yeah. And like any cartoon or any show, characters, they fluctuate in terms of how much screen time they get. And so, you're talking more in one episode and less or barely at all in another one.
Sure.
Of course, when you're doing 5 voices, better chance that you're doing, you're staying busy every episode. But
exactly.
But Janet Waldo is just one voice. Yeah. So if Penelope Pitstop is not a featured
character
in that episode, then
you barely heard, like Peter Perfect, you barely heard from him.
Yeah, mostly, either to help out Penelope when she was in peril, or basically when his car would fall apart.
I had fun watching these. It's just there's no thought to watching this at all. There's not much of a plot to follow other than they're all trying to get to the same place, and Dastardly is trying to foil them, and he kind of is a Wile E. Coyote type character, like stuff backfires on him, and who's going to win? You know? And there's always there's a lot of slapstick made me laugh out loud.
It is almost all built on gags. Yeah. So they every episode puts them in a spot, whether it's like the Deep South or they're in like a frozen tundra area, and then the gags are built around those. Yeah. And it's really from one gag to the next. Obviously the the key running through it is Dastardly and him trying to upset everybody.
Yes.
But there's really no rhyme or reason to who wins or who loses. It doesn't really matter.
No.
You found out pretty quickly, Dastardly and Muttley will always lose.
Right. They're always last.
They're always ahead of everybody, and then they stop to try and sabotage everybody else. If they would just drive, they would win.
Yes. They had no reason to cheat. They were always in the lead. Like, just once I wanted them to just put them floor it, go across the finish line, and just thumb their noses at everybody.
It would have been a very, like a 1 minute long episode.
Yes.
And they're off. And Dick Dastardly's already won. How'd you do it, Dick?
I lined up at the finish line instead of lining up. Yeah, because the rules, let's say, are loose.
Are non-existent.
There aren't many rules in this race.
Yeah, I mean, they take each other out. There's various points,
Well, and they're not even always on the same course. I loved when they would go to the map and the cars were, figure eighting each other and taking different routes and stuff through the trees trying to get to places. That made me laugh.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's funny because, you mentioned there's no through narrative. There's definitely no cohesion from one episode to the next.
No.
They are standalone. Here's a series of gags. And the episode ends just because they put 3 people across the finish line.
Yes. Which the photo finishes, the slow motion finishes of how you see this cloud of dust come across the finish line, but then they slow it down and you actually see what's going on between the cars as they cross. It's just hilarious.
No, it's very clever. And the other thing that I find really fascinating about it is that it's really captivating and it keeps you entertained, and you realize all it is. You're for the most part, you're standing and looking at the sides of cars going, driving on it. So it's not like you're looking at them like they're coming at you or your overhead shots. For the most part, it's like they're just like flat car driving past you.
Yeah.
Or like you're kind of going alongside of it. So it's really not a dynamic animation.
No.
But it's captivating the way they tell it.
Yeah, and you never had like the point of view like you're in the car driving with them, you're not behind the other car, you're always looking at it almost, in 2D, obviously, but just very flat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's just the way that Hanna Barbera at that time was so busy. They're just cranking stuff out.
Right.
And so, like, what's the fastest, cheapest way we can do this? It's that flat 2D, side-to-side scrolling. Yeah. Let's just do it.
And the backgrounds are sometimes monotone with just some line drawings of trees going by, Yeah. It didn't matter.
No, but it's still... It was just, they're crafted well enough that it just, I thought it just...
there was no real character development. You knew who all the characters were from the beginning, and they never changed.
Yeah.
It's just, I loved it.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of the characters, so there's 11 cars, 23 characters, so we can kind of go through car by car on this.
Sure, yeah.
The 00 is obviously the Mean Machine with Dick Dastardly and Muttley.
Yeah.
So we had talked already, they were, eventually they copied them and put them in the Laugh Olympics in different formats, but... they had, because he's the bad guy, so there's more Dick Dastardly and Muttley than anybody else.
Yeah.
They get clearly the most
right
storyline all the way through. And there's some really great moments. Yeah. Some of the best gags are Dick Dastardly to me.
Yeah. Well, and he's got the pencil mustache, that he twirls, and Muttley's just a mean-looking little dog.
And you can't figure out why Muttley's really, it's just like a faithful sidekick, or what? Why is he? Because half the time he's like, Dick Dastardly will screw up, and he just laughs at it.
Yeah, maybe he's just there for that. He's like, this guy's an idiot. I can't wait to see what he does next. And his car, the Mean Machine, it looked like Val Kilmer's Batmobile, but like crunched short and fat. Because it had that big bubble back and the wing off the back.
Yeah, and it's got like this little point coming off the front of
it.
Right. Yeah, almost like a spike coming off. But
which he never used. I thought he'd use that to...
He used it one time because it's like the one race it looks like he wins it. And they say that he wins it, and then they go back and do the photo finish and realize he extended the front of his car.
That's right.
And so he got disqualified. The point, it was just that point that stuck over.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
But I mean,
even when he won, he screwed himself.
But I think two of my favorite gags are like went at the very end where he's gonna win, and there's one where they do it's gonna be a photo finish, and they stop, and it's. Yeah, like, where's Dick Dastardly? He's standing off to the side. He's got his helmet off, holding it, like, posed. Yes. Like, hair slicked back. And he's like, everybody's there for a picture because it's a photo finish.
God.
And then the other one where like, Dick Dastardly, what happened? He's like, I stopped for an autograph. And like, who wanted your autograph? And they show cuts of Muttley holding up this little piece of paper that says Dick Dastardly signed on it. Had to sign an autograph for Muttley right at the finish
for his dog.
But of course, then you've got the villain and his snarky sidekick. So there's always some good, comments. And my favorite, the one that stuck with me, and I had to include this one is, so he says to Muttley, "One more snicker out of you, and I'll lease you out as a winter headquarters for a flea circus."
Put some thought into that.
I know, that's just really clever. So again, there's some really good gags and really good things that clever that run through these, and
my favorite one is I think it was the one there in the Pacific Northwest. He was trying to cut down a tree to block the road, and Muttley is standing there just waiting to see what kind of catastrophe is going to happen here. So he saws the tree and he puts the V notch in one side. Well, of course, the tree falls the wrong way and falls on his car. So they get the car, Muttley puts the car back together, and he saws another tree, but he does it the opposite way, and it still falls onto him in the car. And Muttley's just sitting there laughing at him. And I knew the whole time, I'm like, that's not the tree's going to fall the other way, no matter what he does. Yeah. And I was waiting for it. And then I laughed out loud when it happened. I knew it was going to happen. I just loved it.
Yeah, there's so many. This is something like with Dastardly, where he actually just a grave peril that he puts himself in. Like there's at one point, I think it might be the same episode, where there's like a pile of huge logs and they just roll right over him, and he goes through it like a paper, like paper through the paper mill type of thing. Where he's just it comes out flat.
Yeah.
Oh God, they're just well crafted gags, but yeah. And he's a good villain, like funny, and obviously non-threatening. But
sure, yeah, he wasn't a threat because everything, just didn't work.
Right.
Like he cut the hole in the ice when they're going across the frozen pond, and then his car winds up frozen. Everyone else drives over him.
The car number 1 was the Bouldermobile with the Slag Brothers Rock and Gravel. And
who bear a striking resemblance to Captain Caveman.
Yeah, they were definitely the inspiration for the Captain Caveman, which would show up about not quite 10 years later. I think it was 75 or 76 where Captain Caveman came along.
Yeah, so those two were hilarious.
Yeah, but just balls of hair with a nose
with
sticking
big nose
out
and a wooden club.
Yeah, and bare arms and feet.
Yeah. And their cars are rock with rock wheels.
And they the original concept for that was it was the Rock and the Caveman. And Joe Barbera looked at it and he's like, this would be funnier if we had 2 cavemen and they're brothers and they just beat each other with clubs. And that's what it became. Like, all right.
A laugh out loud moment for me was they were trying to get their Rockmobile to go faster. Is that what they call it? The Rockmobile or the
Bouldermobile?
The Bouldermobile.
Yeah.
So one of the brothers gets up and stands on the rear of the car and starts hitting the back of the car with his club to make it go faster, and winds up destroying the Bouldermobile.
So then they grab another rock and they pound it and turn it into another Bouldermobile.
Carve a new one.
Yeah, and they just start going again. Oh, yeah. And they would actually propel the car either by hitting each other on the head or like by hitting the side of the car, then suddenly it would go faster.
It would go faster, yeah.
Yeah. And of course they was Oonga Boonga.
Yeah, they didn't say any words. Just Oonga Boonga or whatever. Yeah.
Car number 2 was the Creepy Coupe with the Gruesome Twosome, who are also known as Big Gruesome and Little Gruesome, which are loosely Frankenstein's monster and Dracula.
Yeah.
So you've got like this big hulking monster guy and then like this tiny little purple vampire.
Yeah.
Who's got like a Bela Lugosi accent.
Yes. And they had that haunted house looking thing on the top, which was like Harry Potter's room of necessity. Like whatever they needed came out of there. There was like a dragon or a snake or a ghost or whatever they needed would come out of that thing. And I loved it.
They had dragon power, monster power, bat power, and horror power, which I think was the ghost would come out of it.
Something but like, scare everyone.
Even as they're driving, there's like the bats flying around the belfry.
Yes.
And it's almost like a hearse, and like the head. My favorite little detail on this is like the headlight is actually their little candles.
Yes.
This really old timey And
they never blew out.
Yeah. I had a soft spot for the creepy coop. I always liked that one. That was kind of...
Well, it was interesting to see what they were going to do because they played defense a lot, with their dragon power.
Yeah.
They would, in their horror, that they could play defense. They could protect themselves.
Yeah.
Which was always fun to see what they were going to do.
I think my favorite gag that they do is it's early in the season with the Spokane episode where there's like this haunted, it's like a ghost town and there's literally ghosts in this saloon. And so the ghosts are scaring everybody. Like the Aunt Hilma shows up and they get scared away.
Yeah.
And then the gruesome twosome walks in. The ghosts show up and try and scare him. And Big Gruesome they all kind of look at each other and he does this big roar and it scares the ghosts away. And then they move on and get back in the car and start driving again.
Right.
So.
All right, let's go.
But
I had a soft spot for Professor Pat Pending on a converted car.
Number 3.
Car number 3. Because he could change the car into anything.
Yeah.
Why didn't he just keep it as an airplane or a rocket and win every race? But he was very quiet. He didn't have a ton of stuff to say.
No.
And he was just kind of minded his own business and just kept going forward.
He's a little like Dick Dastardly, except like he's nice.
Right.
And so so everything he's doing is just like, I'm not going to take advantage of it. He's like, Dastardly's doing this, so I'm going to turn this into a pogo stick so I can bounce my way out
over
of
it. Yeah.
Yeah, or whatever. And then, or a hot air balloon.
Yes.
And move forward and then go back into my car again.
Yeah.
So it's, And
he didn't take advantage of what he could do. He just used it to get around Dastardly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously the wordplay with Pat Pending, as it's an inventor. But
yes.
Yeah. Number 4, the Crimson Hay Baler, which is piloted by the Red Max, and that was a hybrid car and airplane. So it could fly short distances, but mostly it just hopped.
Yeah.
And
it would just hop over the 3 cars in front of it or something.
Yeah, and he's like this Belgian pilot.
Yeah.
Almost kind of a little bit like the Red Baron.
Right.
But, yeah.
But he didn't have a lot. I mean, did he even win any races?
He did. We'll go through everybody.
Yeah.
I've got a list of all the finishes, and he did. He got way more wins and finishes than top 3 finishes than I would have thought.
Yeah.
But so he won 3 races.
3 firsts, 4 seconds,
and 3 thirds. Yeah,
yep.
So
10 podium finishes.
10 podium finishes. Yeah, other than that, I mean, he's kind of forgettable.
Yeah.
He's just a guy it's like, he got a plane.
It's just one of the extra cars.
It's a plane that hops. It's fine. But number 5 is the Compact Pussycat with Penelope Pitstop. She was actually one of the last characters created. So they had looked at the whole set of characters in cars, and I believe it was Joseph Barbera looked at it, and as he was reviewing it, realized, we only have male drivers. We need some kind of we need some females, and so they came up with her. Obviously, they need a wider appeal.
Yeah,
and of course, they make her as girly as possible.
Sure.
So
even the gear selector on her car is different kinds of makeup.
Yeah, it's. At various points, it's hairdryer, lipstick, hairspray, and makeup. But then at various points, they add mud pack and bubble bath.
Yeah,
and so she puts on the hairdryer pops out of the trunk and comes over, and just as she's driving, she's getting her hair done. But I mean, as girly as they make her, they do give her a surprising amount of kind of independence and she can kind of
she's not the damsel in
distress.
She's
not. They make it out to be sometimes, and she's like, oh no, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm fine. Yep.
And she's actually, I think, one of the top the top finish. She had 4 wins, which is the most anybody got.
Right.
So,
and she had her car actually looked like a race car.
Yeah.
Her and what was the other Peter Perfect, the Turbo Terrific. Yeah, we'll get to that one. But. Yeah, Penelope Pitstop was fun just because, she didn't seem had a care in the world. She's just along for the ride.
Yeah, this is very relaxed.
She'd stop
Southern
to
Belle.
go shopping.
She's very, very, very composed.
Yeah,
as a driver.
And having Janet Waldo in this as Penelope Pitstop, it always reminds me of. I felt like all these voice characters at Hanna Barbara worked in the same building, and they just stuck their head out in the hallway. Hey, tell Janet to come down here. We got a part for her.
It's kind of what it was.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much like, do you want to do this? Like, hey, this is what you're going to be doing now. Oh,
okay,
great.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
We got a new project for you, Janet. It's this.
One of the, I think, probably the most forgettable vehicle is the Army Surplus Special with Sergeant Blast and Private Meekley. So it's like a mini tank, and of course, it's a play on like the stereotype of like the sergeant, like the loud, boisterous sergeant who yells and is very loud, and then like the kind of Private Beetle Bailey.
It exactly reminded me of Beetle Bailey,
and just kind of like kind of whatever. Sarge.
I totally got a Beetle Bailey vibe from that whole situation.
Yeah,
but they didn't really do a lot.
No, I mean it's
It was a fast tank.
Yeah.
It kept up with the cars.
But, looking at it, kind of going at the statistics, they won 3 races and finished second once, and that was it.
Yeah. Not much.
No, I mean, they had 4 podiums total, which is not even, it's half of the next.
That's not a lot of points.
No, it's not good. So they'd be drummed out of the league at this point.
Right. Yeah. They'd be relegated to the not as Wacky Races.
And it's kind of like the Red Max is that the gags with the Army Surplus too, just they're kind of forgettable.
Right.
Like
I felt the same way.
Yeah, they're like whatever.
Like, their background.
Yeah. One that I'm surprised got as much airtime as it did was number 7, the Bulletproof Bomb with the Ant Hill Mob. And so it had 7 1920s styles gangsters. There's Clyde, who's the leader, and then there's Ring-a-Ding, Mac, Rugbug, Benny, Danny, Willie, and Kirby.
Yeah.
I mean, Clyde's really the only one
that really talks.
Yeah, the most. But yeah, it's essentially like this, turn of the century, mob
prohibition
car.
type.
Yeah. And it's I do like the fact that they sit there in the car and they have they're always checking the police scanner, finding out where the police are, so if they're onto them or not. Yes. So it's like.
Yeah, keep a low profile, guys. We're going to enter this race. My favorite part about the Anthill Mob is they all sat in the front seat. Did you notice that?
I did.
And they're all piled in the front seat.
And there's the one episode where Muttley tries to pretend that he's one of them.
Yes.
And he rides in the back.
Yeah. And they don't notice.
They know he's there. He's just thinking, he's just whatever. I think they identify him as some other guy.
Steering the car.
Yeah. Oh no, it's just.
And they're all sitting in the front. Hey, you guys.
And then they have their getaway power, which is basically that they just Fred Flintstone it.
Yes.
And they just stick their feet through the floor and just start running. It's like these little tiny legs running underneath because they're all short. They're like various points. They disguise themselves as the 7 dwarves.
Yes.
And as kids. Yeah. And it's just...
I enjoyed the Anthill Mob.
Yeah, they're funny.
Well, the Anthill because they're little.
Mm-hmm.
It just. Oh God! It had to be like episode 4 or 5. I'm like, wait a minute, they're all in the front seat. Every time you see them, there's like 8 people in this car, and they're all in the front seat.
And they actually come back. They're actually along with Penelope Pitstop in that spinoff, the Penelope Pitstop spinoff. They're actually the protagonists. So she literally does get in peril. It's the perils of Penelope Pitstop. So she's like captured here and there, and they actually go and try and save her. I mean,
oh really?
Yeah, they're not always the best at it.
Sure.
And half the time she saves herself.
Right.
But it's just so they're
trying.
Yeah, so they are all built into that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. So, but yeah, they're very funny, and they actually get a lot. You get a lot of airtime.
They're very entertaining.
Yeah,
and they do well in the races.
Yeah, so they ended up with, again, tied for the most 4 wins, 5 second places, and 2 thirds. So they ended up with 11 total podium positioning. So, yeah. Number 8, the Arkansas Chugabug with Luke and Blubber Bear. And Luke is just this typical... the stereotypical Southern hillbilly with the big straw hat and the ragged overalls.
Pants. Yeah, and barefoot.
He's basically sleeping. He's he's not sleeping on his porch. He's sleeping on the sleeping in the seat, and his bare feet are just kind of steering the wheel. And in the back seat, you've got this bear with the aviator goggles and a scarf, and he's just chewing his nails and freaking out because he's just a worrisome dare.
He's scared because the driver's asleep at the wheel.
What in tarnation are you upset about back there, Bear?
Yeah, the Arkansas Chug-a-Lug, they have 4 wins, 1 second, and 4 thirds. So they're at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, so they had 8 total. They claimed 8.
Was it 8? Yeah.
Yeah, so, 9 total. So 4, 1, and 4.
4,
so,
1, and 4, yeah. 4
so,
plus 1 plus 4.
Yeah. I can math. Yeah, so they had 9 podiums, but, you know. I kind of like them. There's actually they had a couple. There's one good one where they're driving through the South, and there's like another hillbilly.
They were in their element, yeah.
That everybody's upset about, and he just pulls over like, "Hey guys," like, "Oh hey, all right, now they get along."
Yeah, was Dick Dastardly? Dick Dastardly pretended to be his cousin until the real hillbilly showed up and said, "That's not your kin. I'm your kin." They start blasting away with the shotgun.
Car number 9, the Turbo Terrific with Peter Perfect. Now, see, this is one that surprised me the opposite of the Anthill Mob because Peter Perfect doesn't get as much screen time as you would think.
Yeah.
Because, he's the very first car they mentioned in the opening credits. Mm-hmm. And, he's like...
And he looks like a racer.
He's got like the overly exaggerated huge square jaw and like big chin. And
the handsome guy with the bright smile.
Yeah, and he's always trying to save Penelope Pitstop if she's in trouble and calls her like Pretty Penny. And,
yes.
Yeah, it's just like very proper. But, he was... if it wasn't for the Army Surplus Special, he would be the worst driver. 4 wins, but then 2 second place and 2 third place.
And his car looked like, it had big wheels in the back. It kind of looked like a drag race funny car. Yeah. So it looked like a fast, actual legitimate race car compared to these other contraptions that were going down the road. But the gag with his car is if he would stop quickly, the car would accordion shut. And there was one where he was going to win. And he got to the finish line and there was a rabbit in the way. So he hit the brakes and waited for the rabbit to cross and everyone else just blasted past him. But then his car had accordioned to like a quarter of its size.
And there's various points where it just it falls apart.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, drats. And then he's going to go and fix it up.
Fix it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's kind of, for somebody who's like you would think would be,
more heroic.
Yeah, and kind of like one of the main characters.
He was one of the also-rans.
Yeah, he's just kind of there. Then you've got one of my other favorites, which is number 10, the Buzzwagon with Rufus Roughcut and Sawtooth. So
yes.
Rufus Roughcut is this big, burly, like overly huge lumberjack.
Yeah, he's like Paul Bunyan.
Yeah, and he's just, got like the red flannel shirt and the green, stocking cap. And he's just, and then Sawtooth is just his sidekick Beaver,
right?
And at various points, and they're driving this wooden crate essentially, and it has the circular saw blades as wheels. And so they basically have no problem with terrain everywhere they go.
They did well on the ice.
And in at various points, like if the car starts falling apart, Sawtooth just starts climbing around on the outside of it while Rufus is driving, and he just fixes it and repairs it and keeps going. So there's some really good gags, just sight gags with the way that the Buzzwagon drives through things.
Yeah. Well, they were going through like a serpentine course through the forest, and then the Buzzwagon just went straight through, cut all the trees on the way through.
I think at one point he just drives right through the Anthill Mob's car, and it just falls into pieces. And so then they just put it together and start driving again. Yeah. But it's funny. But no, I don't know what it is about because a character who kind of gets a little bit more screen time. But mostly because it's sight gags, and so when you've got this guy who's driving
with a beaver,
and driving basically saws and can cut through things, and it lends to more entertaining as opposed to just a hopping plain car.
Sure,
but Rufus Roughcut ended up with 3 wins, 6 second places, and 4 third places. So that was actually the second most podium stops.
Finishes.
Number 1 was actually the Slag Brothers, who had 15 total. And that's carried heavily by they had 8 second places, and 3 firsts and 4 thirds. And then the third best was the Creepy Coupe with 3 wins, 3 second places, and 6 third places. But, yeah, it was... pretty well balanced when you look at most of them had three. I think everybody had 3 wins, and then 4 people had 4 wins. Penelope, the Anthill Mob, the Chugabug, and Peter Perfect.
Mean Machine never podiumed.
Never did anything. No.
Always last.
Drat and double drat.
That's when you fire your team principal.
That's when you fire your dog.
You get new drivers and you start over. Sponsors are leaving.
No, but I think overall, I mean, it was really. I like this cartoon a lot, and it's not. Obviously, there's not a lot of deep thinking with it. It's just gag after gag after gag, and hey, now these people win, and and you know, just like one of the little things I liked is like every single license plate has HB on it.
Yeah,
so it's Hanna Barbara. Just like very subtle, but it's there, and
which is funny. They even had license plates.
Yeah,
these are race cars. The do-batters.
Yeah.
Not ne'er-do-wells, do-batters.
Do-batters.
Double-dealing do-batters, they were called.
One of the other things that I really liked about it, too, is that the opening credits, you know what you're in for. It runs through all 11 cars, tells you every single vehicle, everybody who's racing, what's going to happen, and here we go.
Yeah.
I mean, it sets up even
off to a standing start.
Yeah, because Dick Dastardly's tied everybody to do a post, and then he shifts into the wrong gear and slams in the post and lets them all free, and then they're off.
And now he's stuck under the post. Every time.
Yeah. And then it ends. I always kind of like the way it ends, and I know the ones that we were watching didn't have the narration on all of them, but it always ends like, and they're off again, and it's kind of running through, and like, wait a second, this race happens next week.
Yeah.
And then Dick Dastardly, it always ends with Dick Dastardly like, I'm gonna get ahead from everybody, and then suddenly like it says at the end at the top, and it crumbles and lands and crushes his car. It drat. So I mean,
I loved how he maintained the Dick Dastardly character maintained his cool. Mm-hmm. He never really got super upset. He's just like, oh well, drag here, foiled again.
Yeah, just get angry at Muttley.
That didn't work.
But I guess when you're failing every single time, it's like, all right, you kind of know what's coming.
He owns it.
It's like, all right, how am I going to screw this up?
Well, and Muttley is just standing there waiting for it to go wrong. He's never lending a hand.
No.
He's like, I'm not touching that.
And then he laughs.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this cartoon too. I mentioned at the beginning of this that there wasn't a lot of character development, and I think that would have ruined it, because you don't want all that.
No.
Just get me to the gag. I want the gag. I want the races. I want to see what each car is going to do. There's a big gap in the road, and of course he's going to turn in, Professor Pat Pending is going to turn into an airplane and go over that. And you want it to happen, and it happens. It's hilarious.
Yeah, and it's more a matter of like, well, what's his car going to turn into this time?
Exactly.
Or like, how are they going to get around this? Or like, how does the gag fail? And what's Dastardly going to do about it? And, or like, how's he going to lose this time?
Right. And I wonder, Professor Pat Pending kind of gave me Doofenshmirtz vibes.
He does. He's the long nose, kind of like slightly like hunched forward,
hunched over in the long nose,
but he's got like the big, poofy orange afro as opposed to.
But I'm like, that could be Doofenshmirtz's grandfather or something,
Pat Pending a Schmertz.
Yeah. Maybe he's a German scientist. Doofenshmirtz is definitely a German name.
Yeah, he doesn't have his own theme song. That would have been good, though.
Yes, that would have been great. Yeah. So yeah, overall, I really like this. I don't know about like good, bad, and ugly on this one. The good was the gags for me. The gags were great.
Yeah, I agree. The gags, I liked they had it worked in their favor to have so many characters.
Yeah.
To have, and not just 11 cars, but then you have multiple characters in some of the cars, and it kind of really helps kind of sell, whatever.
Well, it sold it because not all of the gags worked on all of the cars.
Right.
Yeah. So there was a trap or a gag that Dirk would put in place, and some cars it didn't bother them at all. And other ones it was total disaster. For them, but it didn't work on all of it. It was like he was aiming for 50%. This will slow down some of the cars.
So the diversity in terms of the characters, the voice cast is so good.
Oh, they're awesome.
I mean, and they are all distinctly different and really well done. I did like the use of the narrator. I thought that makes it greatly improves it. I mean, a lot of positives about it. There's actually way more positives and way more good than it's worth just kind of running down that we haven't already said already.
Yeah, and the narrator as the race announcer made it exciting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was like you were listening to the race on the radio, and he was really describing what was going on.
But there's like enough like certain points where like the snark in his the tone in his voice. Like he doesn't say anything that's really snarky, but it's just like,
of course, this is
sneaky Dick Dastardly. What are you up to now? You know, it's just kind of like this.
That was my favorite when Dirk would speak back to him.
Yeah, they're just driving along, and so they both Dick Dastardly and Muttley both look right at the camera and they start talking.
Yes.
And Dick Dastardly starts talking to him. It's just like, all right.
Wait till you see what I have next.
Yeah, this ongoing conversation that only he seems to hear. It's funny.
That's great. Oh, God, I love that bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any bad you saw?
The only bad I could come up with is it's a light criticism because of just the way they're crafted, but it would have been nice to see some kind of like stakes in the race, so like who's going to win, like it actually makes sense as to why. Otherwise it's totally random.
Sure,
it's totally random that Penelope Pitstop wins this one because there's nothing that she did or anything happened that really led to her winning or leads to anybody winning in any particular race. It's just they just happened to win.
Yeah, so you would think like in Seesaw, Arkansas, that would be a perfect one. So in the Seesaw, Arkansas episode, you want the Arkansas Chugabug to win, and they don't.
Yeah.
You think they'd have home court advantage there or something.
Yeah, or like the Pacific Northwest, and you'd have like the Rufus Rough Cut going when they're going through all the forests.
Yeah. Well, of course he's going to win that one, and no, he doesn't.
But they don't, and it's just like, okay, well, we need to...
Totally random.
Yeah, we need to kind of pick 3 people to finish.
Right, yeah.
And so it's most of the story is Dick Dastardly, and particularly why doesn't he win?
Exactly.
As opposed to who wins and why did they win it?
Yeah.
It's a mild criticism. This is not like, I don't
think
watch
they put that much thought into it.
No, it wasn't. It really was. It's
that's what made it great.
Series of gags, and that's kind of like the closing, like the Jim Henson used to say, like if you have trouble getting out, you just throw a bunch of penguins in the air, you blow something up, and then it ends. That's just like you just send some people across the finish line, and this is over.
Yep.
So
make the finish interesting. Yeah. I did laugh out loud at the photo finish one where Dastardly standing there for a portrait,
and it's his pose and it's his face. He's just so
proud.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a great visual gag.
Yeah.
Did you have any bad or
not really? I mean, the thing I liked about it is something that other people would see. There was no character development really. You knew who these characters were from the get-go, and that was it.
Yeah.
They didn't grow, they didn't change, but that's what I loved about it.
Yeah.
So, I'm really stuck.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a cartoon we can really go there with good, bad, and ugly, because there really wasn't much to it.
Yeah. No, and it's really not meant to be that deep.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
But,
if we had to go deep.
Yeah. Because that's what we do. So.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of ugly. Not much, but there's, I think it's episode 3 where they have the crazy buffalo, which is like the Native American.
Oh, yeah, the Native American.
And it's like the really bad stereotypical, Native Americans.
The war paint and everything,
And like the stilted conversation. And
Which one? That was
episode 3.
Episode 3, Mishmash, Missouri Dash.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because they're in Missouri, and then and then the next episode is, or there's 2 races in each episode, right? So it's Missouri, and then there was the Idaho A Go-Go. I think that's what it was.
I think it was Idaho A Go-Go. So it would have been race 3 probably.
Yeah.
And then it would have been the 7th episode, or 7th race, the Siesta. They called it the Siesta Crowd is the way I'd written it down. It's like they're going through, I don't know if it's New Mexico or somewhere where it's, this, they go through and everybody's like in their like big sombreros and they're sleeping in the afternoon because it's siesta time. And so the crowd is really not excited. And there's like a bit of Like a couple,
ha ha ha.
a couple of like the lazy,
the
lazy Mexican stereotypes. It's mild,
right?
But the fact that they're in there is a little
lame. Yeah.
Again, of its time, something you wouldn't see nowadays. But
right.
It was that, and for this and for its time, and considering the fact that they go pretty much, they cover the United States in different regions,
which was kind of cool.
It's pretty. They actually did fairly well.
Yeah.
So, overall, it was really good. What would you give it as a grade?
So this one surprised me because I really liked it, but to compare it to other cartoons isn't really fair either, because it's not trying to be it's not trying to be Scooby-Doo with a deep plot and everything. But I still want to give it like an 8 because it was so funny.
Yeah.
And it wasn't trying to be anything else. It was like, here's a bunch of crazy stuff that's going to happen. And the loose plot is it's a car race.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in that same boat. I would put it a 9.
Yeah.
Because it is innately rewatchable.
For sure.
I mean, they're not long. I mean, you don't have to watch a bunch of watch one race at a time, or if you want to watch a couple, they're just entertaining. They're funny. They are exactly what a Saturday morning cartoon should be. Just They're light and enjoyable, and when they're over, and you move on.
Fun.
Yeah, and like you don't have to sit and like dwell on it. It's just like, all right.
There's no cliffhangers at the end. I found myself when I was watching. I binged a lot of them, and I checked my phone but as soon as I heard Dick Dastardly voice, I looked up because like something's going down, and I got to see this, So I really had fun with it. Really enjoyed this cartoon.
Yeah, I did too. I really liked it, and I'm glad we got to kind of go through this and review it. So, and I'm sure I'll watch it again.
I'm sure you will. So what do you want to do next?
Well, we keep talking about the superheroes and the peril and stuff from the 1960s, so we should probably dig into one of those.
Yeah.
So I think it's time for Space Ghost.
You mean Space Ghost?
Exactly. So it'd be Space Ghost and Dino Boy, which was what the original series
original cartoon was called. Yeah.
I don't think we'll spend too much time with Dino Boy.
No.
I don't think we should spend much time with Dino Boy.
Spoiler alert.
But no, I think I think it's time to dig into some of that 60s excitement.
I'm looking forward to it. That'll be fun.
Well, I hear Mom. I think it's time for us to go outside. So that means cartoon time is over. I'm John.
I'm Robert.
And this is Toon Talk.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you want more Toon Talk, you can find us on Twitter @ToonTalkGuys.
Or if you've got questions, comments, or suggestions, you can email us at toontalkguys@gmail.com.